So in this first video, we're going to take a look at how to create the bar charts, and we're going to create a 4-bar graphic. And to start with, we want to create some templates. We want to create an environment where we can load multiple templates and create multiple templates. So it's always good to create a project folder or to work in a project. So I'm going to go here and create my project. And I'm going to go in, I've got a temp folder here that I've created for my blog. And inside of it, I'm going to create a folder called templates. And that's going to be my project for this blog post. So right now, if I try to open a file, say don't save, it's empty. So that's where I'm going to put all my scenes. So we're going to create a bar chart to start with. And what I can do is I'm just going to go into the front view and maximize this view. And we're going to create a straight line to define kind of the environment, well, not the environment, but the limitation of our graph. So I'm going to go in the line and I'm going to use the shift key. By holding shift, it allows you to draw a straight line. So I'm going to go like this and to the right here and then right click to end the graphic. If I grab the key here, or the two vertices, sorry, I can go into the move mode and make sure that it's in absolute world at 0, 0, 0. And same thing here. If I go in move or move settings, I'm just going to make sure it's at X0 and Z0. Same thing here for the one at the top. X0 and the Z here, we're just going to leave it at 130. Same thing for the for this vertex here. I'm going to make sure that Z is at 0, and in X I can give it a precise value of 230. It's not mandatory that you do this, but I kind of like the round value. So if ever I need to do some calculations, if I want to position some lines or anything like that, if it's precise values, it's much easier to work with. So we've got our basic line now. Then we don't really see it in the viewport because it's just a line. So if I just orbit in my perspective view, I can apply the sweep modifier. Oops, not the mesh select, but the sweep. Go at the bottom here and sweep, 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 sweep. It's right here. And now you can define what kind of a shape you want to have for the border. I can just go here and say I want to have a bar, or I can have a circle or a tube. Where's the tube? That's right here. So I can, oops, where's the pipe here? So I can have that. But right now I'm just going to use a bar. That's going to be the simplest one, and I'm going to reduce the length and the width, and that's going to be the basis for my line chart. So that's the first thing we've done. Now I can add the text for the y-axis and the x-axis, the legend of this. So I'm going to go here in using the text tool. Again, I can go into the front and go and say text. And now the text is very big, so I'm going to reduce the size. I can choose the font. So I'm just going to use, I don't know, Arial Black. And I'm going to call that X-axis. And you can see that as I'm changing the text, it's going from left to right. So I'm going to center it so that whenever I change, it's always going to be, like if I just go here, you'll see that it's going to go from the middle. So that's kind of what I want. And the size here, I'm going to minimize this, something like this. And then I can use the key, the transform tool to place it in position. I'm going to clone this, just clone this and make it a copy. And that's going to be for the y-axis. And I'm going to change this for the y. And when you do text objects like this, and we know that we are going to update them, it's always good to give them a precise name. So what I'll do here is I'll call that text underscore x underscore axis. And this one here, I'm going to select it and do the same thing. Text underscore y axis, and I know that I can recall them from scripts, or if I'm looking at them, I'm looking for them in the animation window, it's easy to find. I need to rotate this. I can use the rotate tool, or I can go into the transform toolbox. The transform toolbox, what it allows you to do is to rotate from the current point of view. So if I rotate negatively here, you can see that it's a very quick way to rotate by 90 degrees. So I use the toolbox a lot when I do these types of rotation. So the y-axis will be here. It's made to grow from the center. So if we change the text, it's going to grow from the center. The thing is that if I go to perspective view here, it's a 2D text. So I'm just going to use a extrude modifier, just to extrude it just a little bit so that it's 3D. And I can just drag this extrude modifier. I can make it a clone if I want to, but I'm not going to do it for now. But if you want that to be like precisely exactly the same, I'm going to say copy. And on this one here, I'm going to delete the extrude modifier, and I'm going to say paste instance. So if ever I decide to change the if ever I decide to change the thickness of this extrude modifier, both of them will change at the same time. Go back here to my maximized view. We've got our basic for the graphic. Now I'm going to create the bars themselves. So I'm going to go in create a box. The box here, I'm going to put it right at the origin. I can define the length here. Maybe 30 will be good, and the width 30 will be good, or even maybe that's a bit big. So let's say 25 and 25. And the height here, I'm going to set it to a kind of a value that makes sense for this graph that is in the middle. It doesn't really matter. It's just that it gives us a sense of how big the bar will be and what kind of adjustments we need to make on the values to have the proper height so that it looks correct in the when we're going to render. So let's say 50 will be good. So I'm going to leave it at 50. It's kind of going to go to the transform and put it right there at 0 so that it stands right there in the in the middle of the bar. Right now, if we take a look at this, it's kind of a little bit flat. At the top, it's flat, so I can, or the edge are a bit too sharp, sorry. So what I can do, I can adjust the chamfer only at the top. But before I do this, if I want the chamfer to not be scaled, what I'll do is I'll apply the an Xform modifier first. So Xform, which is at the bottom here so you don't see it. So the Xform modifier will allow me to scale within the object without affecting the scale of the object. So if I just go back here and say, grab the gizmo here and I scale it up, you see that it scales exactly like if we were scaling the object, but it's within the object itself. So we're not affecting the transformation, which means that now that the Xform is done, I can apply a poly select modifier, which is right here, and I can grab only the top edges with this poly select selected, and then I can go and say a chamfer, and I can define a chamfer amount here or something like that, and the segments here I can leave it to 1, and now what we have is a chamfered top, and it's quad chamfer, which is a new feature of 2015, so that's good. We can use that. So because of that, if I go back to the Xform here and I show the end result, if I scale this up and down, you see that the chamfer scaling is not affected, so it's going to look good even if it's scaled up and down. And that's kind of what we want here for the Xform. So now we got one done, and I'm going to give it a material. So I'm going to grab this here, give it a material. It's going to be just a generic material, default 01, and that's going to be good. And then what I can do is copy it. I can just use the same tool. I can use the move tool and just move it to the side. So if I use shift and move, and I'm going to create 3 copies of it, and I don't want to make them as clone because we're going to animate them separately, so now I can just distance them a little bit more, something like that, and we are good with that graph. So now they're all of the same height. We're going to adjust that later. They all have their chamfer, so that's good. They all have their Xform, so we're going to be able to animate that separately, which is what we want. So now we're done with the basics. I can also change the material. I'm going to assign default number 2 to that second box here. Default, and I need to make them all separate or different materials because when we're going to adjust the colors, we want them to be all independent. We don't want them to have all of the same material. So now we have default 1, 2, 3, and 7 here, which are assigned to, and of course we could name them correctly if we want to have a quick access and we want to know what they are. But now we're good with the basics, so we are ready to animate. I'm not going to create a super crazy animation, but I want to create just a generic animation. So I'm going to turn on auto key. I'm going to go to the bars there. I'm going to grab the vertices and just say I want to animate. So that's going to be my ending animation. So I'm going to just move it to record the animation for this. Same thing for this guy here. I want to animate the final position. So I'm going to record that. Then go at the beginning and just bring it to a value of 0 here, and grab this one here and bring it to a value in X of 0. So what we have now, if I just get out of the modifier, what I've got is something that looks like this. It grows from 0 to 100. Then I can also animate the text coming into frame. So again, auto key, going to record that final position, and then at the beginning, I'm just going to say you are going to be somewhere like here and somewhere like that. So when it's going to come into frame as the graphics are coming in. And we can define how we're going to animate the bars. And the bars, that's kind of the tricky part. Not the tricky part, but that's the important part, is we added the Xform modifier, and that's because we want to animate the gizmo, so we're not changing anything else in the bar. So I'm going to go here and say auto key, And I'll say at frame maybe 30, I want that to be full scale. So I'm going to record the scaling of this for the gizmo. And so I'm going to record that something like this, and then go to 0. And we're going to scale it to 0. And actually, if I want that to be very precise, what I'll do is I'll go to the curve editor, make sure that we find the modify object, X-form, and the center here is we're going to go to the scale, and the value here in Z, we are going to make this a value of 100 at frame 30. And here we're going to make it a value of 0 at frame 0. So now what we have is something very precise. It's going to go from frame 0 to frame 30. I can do exactly the same thing for the 3 others. I should have actually animated them at the beginning, which would have saved me some time. So what I'll do, I'll just delete those here, and I'll grab this, and I'll just shift and clone it 3 times. And now what I've got is exactly the same animation for the 4. So what I can do is I can select the 3 here, and select the 3, and you can grab the animation, and by showing the time range here, I can just move it to the right and I'm just going to select the 2 here, control and select, and move these here to a bit later in the animation, and grab the last one here and just move it later in here, something like that. So what we have now is all of them animate separately. Maybe this one should start a bit earlier, something like that. And we have our 3 animation. If we want to speed it up, we can speed it up. That's a bit slow, but the concepts are the same. You can create your own graphics. But the idea is that we want to create a generic animation, and then we're going to go and update this graph as with the control object. So now that we're done with this, we have our animation. Actually, what I need to do is to reassign my materials because I cloned my objects. I'm going to grab these 3 here and just reassign them so that we have 4 different materials for all of these 4 objects. We can create our camera animation. So what I'll do is I'll just enable the save frame, and I'll just position the camera somewhere like this to begin with, maybe a bit further. I'm going to go in auto key mode and Control C to create the camera. I'm going to make the camera a free camera, and at the end of my animation, I'll just orbit something like this, and maybe dolly in, something like that. And now we have our animation movement. It's a bit slow, but the concept is the same, so that's good. We got our animation, we have our save view, so we're ready to save that file. We are going to call this one bar_4 because whoops. Okay, anyway, so it's called bar_$. So we want to, I'll rename it bar_4, so just save as and delete the other one. So bar and 4, bar 4 to show that it's a 4-bar graph. So we're done with the basic setup of our scene. Now we are going to go into the basic of creating the template so that we can edit the content of this graph.